Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to St Mary's Vicarage on what is a pretty grotty, grey, foggy Dorset day, it has to be said. But I'm sure there's beauty in it somewhere. I'll have a look later on when I go out for a walk. Anyhow, I hope you're all right. Sorry, a little bit late logging on this morning. I had a couple of phone calls, and then somebody rang me on my mobile, and unfortunately, because it's one of those things about being having moved over to the dark side and using Apple, is that because my Apple iPhone to my iMac, if my Apple iPhone rings, my iMac rings, and it sort of stops doing what it's doing and tells me there's a telephone call. So I just hit the live button, and somebody decided to ring me on my mobile. So apologies if it goes off again. Anyhow, lovely to see you this morning on this very grey day. I got out for a lovely walk yesterday afternoon and got some much needed fresh air. There was a little bit of sun out, which was good. Always raises the spirits. But we have had this greyness now for the best part of the week, and I have to say that is always the thing about British weather is the greyness of it. I'm not worried about the cold. In fact, I prefer it to be much colder but brighter, if you know what I mean. So I could quite happily cope with sort of, being at -4, -5, like it is sometimes in the Alps or something like that, and it being bright than it being sort of not particularly cold but very grey. I find the greyness is not good, and I think that I can't remember the proper term for it, but the sort of light deficit disorder. I think that's very true, because I think the lack of sunlight, apart from all the sort of vitamin D's and things like that it does, is that I find it does lower the mood. You just do need a bit of light. Anyhow, enough about the favourite British subject of the weather. I think Scotland's in for snow. They're going to get some really good snow today, apparently. But moving on. Anyhow, a little bit of a film review. You may have seen it last night on BBC Two, but if you haven't, I can... Sorry, that's my phone, as I say, bleeping away. Let's just turn that sound off. You may have seen it on BBC Two last night. It's a film called Breathe. And it came out about 8 years ago, and it's a true story based on a chap called James Cavendish, who in the early 1950s, just after he was married, he was a tea broker, and he unfortunately caught polio, which at the time was a very serious disease. Thankfully now, due to vaccinations and such like, it has nearly been eradicated from the planet, but it is a terrible disease. And I remember having a history teacher at school, my first boarding school, who had survived polio as a young child, but the consequences he lived with for the rest of his life. So he had to walk with, he was semi-disabled, and he had to walk with sticks and things and such like, but terrible disease. Anyhow, it's a brilliant film called Breathe. It has I can't remember the actress's name, but she was the first lady to play the Queen in The Crown, and if you watch it, you can probably see why she got the part. But it's based on a true story, and as I say, he contracts polio in India, and as a result is really paralysed from the neck down, and has to breathe through a ventilator. And really at that point, he really had two prognoses, which was, one was to die, or two, to spend the rest of his life sort of attached to a respirator, artificial respirator, in a hospital ward, and that would have been his existence. But really, thanks to his wife, initially his amazing wife, and her determination to get him out of the hospital, and a fantastic group of friends he had, particularly an inventor that's played brilliantly by Hugh Bonneville. She managed to get him out of the hospital and to begin to care for him at home. And this was the first time this had ever happened with somebody who was basically dependent on life support. So she managed to do this, and then, in a sense, the fortitude and courage of her husband, and thinking about different ideas, plus his wonderful friends, particularly his inventor, he managed to create sort of all sorts of wonderful contraptions and things that enabled him not only to sort of remain in a bed, but to go out into his garden to be with his young son. And the story goes on. And he then links up with a doctor, a professor, to work to improve the situation of the many, many polio sufferers whose existence was, you know, really worse than death, to be honest with you, sort of imprisonment, not only in an institution, but in their own bodies. And did an awful lot of work. It's a very moving film. So it was on BBC Two last night. You may have caught it, but you can watch it on Catch Up on iPlayer. You might want some tissues with you. But it's a wonderful story about sort of hope over adversity and courage and meeting the challenges that that we face, and particularly in the situation we find ourselves in today. And it's beautifully filmed. It was actually produced and filmed by his own son, who became a film producer and director. So well worth a watch. It's called Breathe, and it was on BBC Two, but I'm sure you can watch it on Catch Up on iPlayer if you wish. Right, looking ahead to Sunday. So I have chatted with the church wardens, and we've sort of weighed up all the pros and cons of physical worship at the moment. So the decision for the moment is that the next Sunday this coming Sunday will be online worship again. I'm just going to open up my calendar here. So this coming Sunday will be online worship. The first Sunday in Feb. Next Sunday, the following Sunday, which is Valentine's Day as well, will be online worship. But we're going to aim to try and have our first physical worship, which will be a Holy Communion service at St Rumbold's, on the Sunday the 21st of February, in about 3 weeks' time. Of course, that is very dependent on how the virus is affecting this particular area. Cases were going down, I noted, and hospital admissions had started to decrease as well a bit in this area, but they have sadly started to increase again in Dorset, and that might be down to this new variant or other factors, so we will have to take that into account. But we are going to aim for a service which will be actually it coincides with the first Sunday in Lent, so it'll be online worship this coming Sunday, online worship the following Sunday, and then hopefully the 21st of February we will try for a physical communion service at St Rumbold's that will also be broadcast online, and then the following Sunday after that a communion service at St Mary's. But as I say, all dependent on what happens over the next few weeks with the virus, particularly in this area. Oh, Harry Wilson. Good morning, Harry. Got to say good morning to Harry. Harry is, well, he's one of my friends too. I like to count Harry as a mate of mine, but he's really a friend of my two boys up in at university in Chester. Hope it's all going well, my friend. I heard some reports last night from Alex and Ben up there, but I hope you're enjoying Chester and everything. And we hope it's not too long before you and others of Alex and Ben's mates can get down here to Dorset and we can have great fun. I have to say my children's friends are great. They're a really interesting bunch, and they're great fun, and they're very kind because they let this old git hang around with them every so often and listen to what the youth of today is up to. So good morning, Harry, lovely to see you. Anyhow, so that's what's going to happen with worship. We just need to see what happens. Now, we will be moving into Lent, and normally we would have a service on Ash Wednesday, which is the 17th of February, that would enable people to be ashed. And I would really like to be able to do this, but I think realistically it's probably not sensible. Also, of course, with ashing, there's quite a bit of physical contact and such like, which we should probably avoid. So I'm trying to think about how we might mark Ash Wednesday online or as a community in some way together. So just watch this space. I have got a few ideas from some other colleagues about what they're doing on Ash Wednesday, so that will happen. Now, with regard to our Lent course, we are going to have sort of Lent sessions on Wednesday evening over Lent via Zoom. And as I say, I've been struggling a bit to find a course that we could use. But rummaging through my files and my cupboard the other day, I suddenly came across a course which I had actually written some years ago. I wrote it as part of a thesis that I did, and I first delivered it. It was when I was doing my MA, and it was and I in my MA I was researching spiritual development, particularly of adolescents. So I wrote this. Well, it wasn't a thesis, I suppose, a paper. It was a long paper about prayer and spirituality, and particularly about different styles of prayer and how it fits into people's personalities. Anyhow, as part of this, I wrote a course which was entitled More Than Words. And I used it when I was a curate, and I also delivered it, I think, when I was at Shrivenham. Some people might remember that. Anyhow, I found it again, or most of it. There are some bits missing. And I thought we might do that for our Lenten studies. It will work online, and it will be a few weeks of exploring different aspects of prayer and prayer styles and types, and how it fits in with our own particular personality. Some of you may have heard of a thing called Myers-Briggs personality indicators, or things like Enneagrams, where you work out in Myers-Briggs there's 16 different types of personalities, and some people had done quite a bit of study and research into how different personalities affects the way or the type of prayer that we'll be most suited to. So as part of writing the paper, I had to sort of have guinea pigs to find out the different prayer styles. So I wrote this course as part of it. So I thought we might use that because I think it might work online, and I think people might find it quite interesting. And we can certainly do it over the sort of 5 weeks or so of Lent. I might have to modify some bits of it a bit. And people might find that sort of an interesting thing, exploring prayer and spirituality and how it links in with our own personalities and such like. So if you think that might be an interesting thing to do, then ping me a message, and I'll fish the rest of it out, and there's handouts and things we can get out to people and such like. But I thought we might do that. Anyhow, that's sort of Lent. We had a fantastic. I've also got to say, I know I talk about the Scouts a lot, but the Scouts are great in this village. I have to say, it's great fun for the youngsters, and it's great fun for the leaders as well. And that's the way it should be. But we had live cooking on Monday and Tuesday night, making Scotch eggs. So as you know, Ben is a trained chef or qualified chef, though he's decided not to pursue that career. So we made Scotch eggs, and we did it live in the vicarage kitchen. Sort of Ben was there all in his chef's outfit, and using Zoom, I was the sort of cameraman and filmed Ben making the Scotch eggs live, while all the Scouts, the youngsters, were at home in their kitchens with their parents being supervised, following Ben, doing the cooking and making the Scotch eggs at home. And we've seen lots of photographs of Scotch eggs. I see Skip's with us this morning. I think he's sampled some of them. But it was great fun. And technology, we're so lucky to have this technology that, with a little bit of learning and such like, we can use, and all engage in that together. Anyhow, we were doing more cooking next week with the Scouts, and doing Spanish chickpea stew recipe. If anybody wants a recipe, it doesn't just have to go out to the Scouts. I can email it out. And we're going to be doing that. This time I'm going to be the chef, as it's my recipe, and Ben is going to be the cameraman. So looking forward to that, which is good. Right, let's move on. And so Saints' Days, here we are. today is a sort of minor saint day. It's Gilbert of Semfringham, up near in Norfolk. And Gilbert says of this, born in 1083 in Semfringham, the son of the squire, Gilbert became the parish priest in 1131. He encouraged the vocation of 7 women of the town and formed them in the community of lay sisters. A group of lay brothers also came into being, and they all kept the Benedictine rule. Gilbert was unsuccessful in his bid to obtain pastoral guidance from Chateau for the inception communities, and they came under the ambit of the Augustinian canons. Gilbert himself became the master. At Gilbert's death in 1189, aged 106, and in 1189 that was something, so aged 106, there were 9 double monasteries in England, 4 of male canons only, and it was the only purely English monastic foundation before the dissolution of the monasteries in the 16th century. And why this is very interesting is I lived in Waterbeach, and if there's any Royal Engineers amongst you, the Royal Engineers had a base in Waterbeach, but when I was at Cambridge, Kate and I lived in Waterbeach there. And in the field next to, or very close to our house, were the ruins, or the remains, I mean there wasn't very much of it left, of a Gilbertine monastery, which is very interesting. So today we remember Gilbert of Sempringham, who founded the first and really only truly English monastic communities, because all the others were obviously based on either Augustine or Benedict or St. Francis, who of course weren't English, but there we go. So that's who we remember today. Now let's have our Bible reading now. I'm going to turn my desk lamp on. It's so dark. Right, here we go. Thursday. Change the goggles. So continuing to read from the letter of Hebrews chapter 12, beginning to read at verse 18. And this is entitled, "What you have come to is Mount Zion and the city of the living God. What you have come to is nothing known to the senses, not a blazing fire, or a gloom turning to total darkness, or a storm, or a trumpeting thunder, or the great voice speaking, which made everyone that heard it beg that no more should be said to them. The whole scene was so terrible that Moses said, 'I am afraid,' and was trembling with fright. But when you have come to it, what you have come to is Mount Zion, and the city of the living God, the heavenly Jerusalem, where the millions of angels have gathered for the festival, with the whole church, in which everyone is a firstborn son and a citizen of heaven. You have come to God himself, the supreme judge, and been placed with the spirits of the saints who have been made perfect, and to Jesus, the mediator who brings a new covenant and a blood for purification which pleads more incessantly than Abel's." This is the word of God. So there we have, in a sense, in Hebrews, a wonderful glimpse of that eternal kingdom, which in the introduction there, the writer is saying that, you know, words really are just not good enough to convey the wonder and the awe and the joy and the love and the amazement of that eternal kingdom, and how as pilgrims on the road we journey towards that kingdom, and one day we will be invited as citizens to join that kingdom and to dwell with the saints and angels. And that's a wonderful vision to have in your head, to dwell with the saints and angels, to be part of a completely different existence like that. It's you know, you can't really fathom it, but in a sense the sort of glimpse there is wonderful and very, very powerful. So the letter to the Hebrews. Now, funnily enough, one of the people who rang me this morning earlier was lovely Margaret Quinn, who lives up at Wood Yates. I know some of you will know Margaret. She rang me to thank me. She's been going through old photographs that her husband had taken, and he used, like many people did for colour photography in those days, he used slide film, Kodachrome and such like. So she has boxes and boxes of slides, and you may remember, you may have done it yourself. In those days, you took everything on slides, and rather than having photo albums, and you'd have a projector, and then every so often you'd have a sort of family photo show, and you'd stick all the films on the projector and have a look at them. But of course, the trouble is, when you've just got a tiny little image, it's very difficult to see them. So Margaret's been going through a few of these, and I've been printing some of them off for her in a larger size. Excuse me. Cup of coffee. Been printing them off in a larger size so she can sort of family memories and such like. Anyhow, when I was speaking to her this morning, she suggested the poem I read you today is entitled Raymond, which is interesting because it sort of fits in a little bit with the film last night, Breed, because as I mentioned, Margaret, when she was younger, spent quite a bit of time working with children with special needs or disabilities and such like. And in her books, there are a couple of poems dedicated to some of those youngsters, and this is one of them. I read one the other day, which was entitled Wendy, which was about a young girl that she worked with who had autism. And she said this is an interesting one, Raymond, because he was in a wheelchair and restricted in that way. So I'll read this one to you. It's a little bit longer than some of the others, but here we go. We're good for time. Raymond. Raymond came to school one day, strapped tightly in his chair. He had to be restricted as his limbs flew everywhere. He was settled in the doorway, just as the school bell rang so shrill. The children filed close by him as he struggled to keep still. His head was always moving, but his eyes were full of joy as he jerked his smile at everyone as a very special boy. The headmaster told the children, in his quiet and gentle way, that Raymond was to join us and hopefully would stay. He was wheeled into assembly on this most memorable of days. The sun shone through the skylight and caught him in its rays. He couldn't hold his hymn book so that he could read his words, but Raymond started singing early, his voice so clearly heard. Sometimes Raymond's body was soft and quiet and still, his face relaxed and dreamy. We thought he might be ill. But with a startled movement, all was straight once more. So violent were his jerkings, his chair moved across the floor. His head was always moving up and down and round. His thin legs twitched and wriggled as they tried to reach the ground. We soon found he didn't notice the movements, didn't bother him. And if he knocked things over, his lips formed, sorry, then a grin. He joined the Christmas disco, lights dimmed in the hall, lots of noise and bustle from him. For him it was a ball. We twisted and we twirled him, safe in his wheelchair, a dancing circus round him, happy faces everywhere. His arms were swinging wildly, his face alight with joy. We danced within his happiness. He was a very special boy. We loved it during painting, as the colours sloshed always. His use of symbols during music made the funniest of days. Raymond wove a spell around us of peace and fun and joy. I heard the staff say often, he's a very special boy. He couldn't join us swimming, but was wheeled around the rim, singing out encouragement to those who couldn't swim. He loved our country ventures, nature walks through field and wood, demanding staff attention when he spotted something good. When we had to listen quietly to search for a special bird, he struggled hard to stop his movements so that the bird song could be heard. He loved the country rambles, when his chair got stuck in mud, as he made grunts and groans of anguish as we all pushed and pulled and shoved. Raymond left us after Christmas. How we miss his happy face, and especially in assemblies when he wasn't in his place. We missed his happy singing, always out of tune and time, and his chuckles and fun comments as we all stood still in line. We missed him nodding wisely as the head gave out the news, and his noisy interruptions as he tried to give his views. This morning found us singing a hymn he particularly liked, and Raymond's special corner was bathed in warmth and light. So a beautiful poem there by Margaret Quinn of her time working with children with special needs and disabilities. And a bit like the film last night, Breathe, and what comes across in this poem is that it's so easy in a relationship with somebody who has special needs or disabilities to instinctively make it very one way, that we can feel that actually it's just our duty to give and to support and to help this person. And what we often forget is the need to open up and to allow ourselves to be able to receive from those people as well. And that is really, really important, because as that poem picks up so beautifully, at first, as Raymond probably came into that school, there were all the concerns and things about, what are we going to have to do? Is he going to be able to do this? Can we do that? And it was all thinking that one way. But as this poem comes to an end, in a sense, of course, what is realised by the staff and the children there is that they had received themselves so much from that time spent with Raymond there. And I think that's so important. When we work with anybody, it needs to be a two-way relationship, but particularly when we work with those of special needs or disabilities, we need to remember they are full human beings like us, even though bits of them might not work in that sense, but they can give us too. We can receive from them, and an important thing. Anyhow, yes, Bill's just put down, of course, Waterbeach, before it was Royal Engineers Barracks, was indeed an RAF base, 41 Squadron, with Javelin night fighters, was indeed. So thank you for being with me this morning, folks. I hope you have a good day in this rather grey and dull weather today. And do take care. And I will see you tomorrow at 10 o'clock. Let's just close with the grace. The grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, and the love of God, and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit be with us all evermore. Amen. Do take care, folks. God bless.